people, welcome back to the next episode of the Amateur's Mind. Today my assistant is going to be one of our oldest friends, a student of mine who I have been working with for quite a while, Pawnviolence. And Pawnviolence is bringing us a really awesome game that we shall have a look at. Pawnviolence is white against Tahakalay. I read that correctly. And our opening is going to be a weird opening. Our opponent is chucking in the doggy ears, which is always an ultimate sign that we are watching the Amateur's Mind. Obviously these moves I preach against very frequently because they are not developing and they are not controlling the center, and as such they are a total waste of spaces. But people seem to be religiously these things. So, luckily for me, my good old Padawan Pawnviolence is following the principles I taught him, which is center, develop. And as a result of that, by this stage, he's sporting a really good looking position, fully developed castle, ready to strike. And here, a very typical move happened that a lot of my own students, as well as many hundreds of thousands of amateurs make. They play a bishop move like this, and they are under the illusion that they have played a developing move. So what's the story? What's wrong with that? Well, the problem with this is that this bishop move is only developing the bishop technically, but not really. So basically what really happening is that this bishop goes from a very bad square to another very bad square, whilst the main feature of the position remains, the main features remain exactly the same. So the objective now for black would be to develop this bishop and get the heck out of here ASAP or some major trouble happens. Now instead he puts the bishop on d7, but it doesn't control any important diagonals. It definitely positively obstructs the queen's view towards the center. As you will see in a second, it is a very important feature of the position, and just in general does not add any value to the position that was already very shaky. So basically what black achieved by playing this move is that now it was white's clock that was ticking. That's pretty much all we can say on the positive side. And Philip here, sorry, Pawnviolence, oh Philip, I let you down, sorry bro. Pawnviolence, whose name shall remain secret, he correctly sensed, which I'm very proud of, that it was time to do some punishment because we are fully developed, our opponent is not, and the king is stuck in. Now when such positions and such situations arise, the general instinct tells you to blast the position open. And in that spirit, Pawnviolence played here e4. Once again, I'm very proud of the thought process, if not so much for the move, but that's a different story. Now what really should have been done here was a very simple masses of trades, e.g. takes, and takes, which at first looks counterproductive because it develops black's bishop. But now after queen b3, we are netting a pawn and winning the game without any dramas. Note please how the bishop on d7 is the main culprit in black's downfall. If it were here back on c8, neither of the pawns would be hanging. By which of course I'm not promoting the idea of leaving your bishops or pieces at home. I'm promoting the idea of developing them onto correct squares, which would have been in this case not to move at all, but to develop this guy and castle. So, e4. Now this is really wild, but it doesn't quite achieve what it intends to achieve. And the reason for that is because black has now a number of pleasant choices. For example, takes, and bishop c6. And all of a sudden, all of the black pieces seem to make perfect sense where they are. Whilst black is still lacking in development, it doesn't seem to be a biggie. I think that this would have led to a roughly even game. Also interesting would have been take on d4. Now I'm not quite sure if my good friend Pawnviolence saw the correct answer here, which is a beautiful piece sacrifice, knight takes d5. Now this is really awesome stuff. The idea of course is what I have been preaching about from the get-go of this opening, is to open up the position. This open e file is so juicy now that the knight goes away after the check. No good way to block check at all. Obviously bishop here loses, bishop e7 loses to d6, and so there is nothing else than offering resignation. And if knight e7 trying to hang on to the knight still, which again is a very typical amateur's mindset here, that oh my god, my knight is hanging, I need to move. If I was black, I would play here, I don't know, bishop somewhere in a heartbeat, and immediately shred the material back and try to survive this position. d6 was playable too, I don't know, I'm too lazy to calculate that now. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. So yeah, knight takes d5 would have been a very juicy move. Now instead what happened was, they took on e4 twice, sorry, no, only once, then they took on d. Now the position is becoming a little bit more complex again, because although white does have a beautiful lead in development, we lost an important central pawn, which is not quite clear immediately how we can gain it back. But in these situations, actually one of the biggest mistakes that one can make, and again, exactly what happened, the game was to be focused on this pawn deficit and try to get it back immediately. Instead, a move like queen e2, totally ignoring the pawn on d4, have been perfect, preparing for rook d1 and then drop the bishop back, full development, and d4 pawn is now under fire. Instead, we play bishop c2 right away. A, it's very early, and B, now we still have some issues in regaining pawn. The opponent played bishop c8. I would not like to waste any words on that, because it simply doesn't deserve it. And again, I think that developing moves like knight e5, look at that, total domination of the center, would have been the best way here for white to continue this attack. If knight takes, bishop takes, puts pressure this way, as well as back to the pawn on d4, that we shall regain now. Instead, knight takes f6 was played, which actually is a very unfortunate decision, because if black took with the pawn, then after e5 he would have had a fantastic position, because now the pawn chain in the center is quite problematic for white to fight into. Luckily for us, queen took back, bishop dropped back to g3, bishop c5 trying to catch up in development, e1, not bad. Very logical would have been here to play a3, the intention of b4, c5, isolating the again. Okay, so when a3 is actually not dog here, but a very useful move. Also because after the later intended queen d3 mate attacks can never be refuted by knight b4. So rook e1 castles, queen d3 as per planned, but now queen f5 is a very, very annoying move. So now we are in a situation where we need to decide again how to continue the attack. Once again, a3 looks awesome, and the good old axiom of bringing all the guys, excuse me, to the party would have perfectly fit the bill. And the next move again is going to be knight e5, followed by trade on e5, followed by bishop takes, and again we will pick the cherry on d4 under favorable circumstances. Now bishop h4 is tempting, but really g5 is not really that big of a deal from black's point of view. This king is no more vulnerable than what it used to be before. And here comes the disaster. He plays f5, and by doing so, actually that's not that disastrous. Nah, it's not that good either. Now we get to occupy the e5 square, which is very, very important. And again, the d4 pawn is somewhat isolated from the rest of the army. I wonder what the best move for black would have been. Oh yes, that's exactly what I was telling you about. That in this position, a3 forcing a5 would have been super useful. That would have negated this for eternity. Sadly for us, we fell into it really, really hardcore. Here, knight b4 would have been a pop-up. We've got nothing for it. Two bishops is safe. Get out. Luckily they played f5. Now bishop e5 takes, and all of a sudden we are looking very good again. The only objective now that seems to be a little bit challenging is still to regain this, but black actually made sure that that happened without any dramas. Bishop d7 would have been the best move here for black, with the intention again of developing his pieces. This time bishop on d7 still stands bad, but it had to go there. Bishop d6, queen d4, and hallelujah, we are back at it again. Beautiful position, blockade on e5. From this point on, actually, White's play is super consistent and really good, bringing the rook in the position, in the play, creating a pin here, takes f5 maybe, threatening once the queen has gone, and so on. Bishop here, proving the bishop, c5, beautiful. Like, this part of the game was really well played by Pawnviolence, and after rook d8, queen e3, it's basically curtains, hanging, nothing can be defended. But as per somewhat usual in amateurs games, and you will find it, and I'm not being nasty here, but these are the facts, when weaker players are under tremendous pressure, almost inevitably they lose something more valuable than what's on the cards. E.g., right now it seems like black is about to lose these 2 pawns, yeah? So it goes like, nah, I can't let that happen. Well, choice, buddy, you lost the bishop instead. Nah, I can't let that happen. Alright, okay, then you lost the rook. So these type of collapses happen a lot. And one of my very common theories is that amateur players tend to hurt themselves a lot more than they hurt their opponents. And in contrast, or rather a reverse order of that theory, is that very often all we need to do is to allow them to hurt themselves, like so. So bishop d5, bishop takes, rook takes, and then the finish was this beautiful pin. And Pawnviolence scored a very awesome victory against his opponent, Tahakalay. So the typical things that I would like to mention as a conclusion about this game was the dog ears that are almost always a disaster. The correct response to it, that would have been the full opening up of the position followed by attacking weaknesses. And also the fact that even when down in material for initiative, it's a good idea to keep on building the position up instead immediately trying to hunt back the material. The thing is that a lot of players, especially amateurs, look at this position saying, I'm a pawn down. And that's their assessment of the position. Whereas the correct assessment of this position, I'm ahead in development, way ahead in fact. My king is way safer, but I'm a pawn down. The first 2 outweigh the second, therefore I'm a lot better. Now, if I'm a lot better, despite of being the pawn down, then it doesn't really make too much sense to actually try to hunt that pawn. And I actually forgot to mention that here knight d6 have caused tremendous trouble in black's camp, because now castling is cut off, which is exactly what should have happened here, instead of yeah, the immediate wanting to grab the material that put us on some sort of a deficit. And from here on, the game has become a little bit iffy, with lots of near misses and second bests. In particular, knight b4 is a move here that no one can plunder. But from this point on, White has played perfect chess. Good on him. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll be back with more soon. Bye!